Okay, so we've just spent the last 3 hours looking at a number of different projects, many of which sit under the umbrella of PSE. And most of them that you've seen are either protocols or products. But in addition to that, the PSE also does other initiatives such as education initiatives, and a look at kind of bringing on board the next generation of ZK engineers and researchers, among other things. So what I'm going to be talking about today is actually one of our initiatives in that space. We have a number of them. But yeah, so we'll go through kind of like this program that we have, kind of designed to open up the aperture and increase the pipeline of people that work in the space. So kind of like just a year and a half ago, we were looking at some of the problems in the space and realized that there weren't enough people working on kind of like the research and kind of like primitives level when it comes to like ZK, program for cryptography in general. And we went about designing a program to, one, basically empower the next generation of engineers and researchers with a focus on open source contributions, because that's something that's core to the Ethereum ecosystem. Two, we wanted to create a ZK curriculum that could act as a public good, that could be used by a broad audience. And the third one was to kind of kickstart and create ZK communities all around the world. So when we were doing this, we kind of took a look at like what are the problems around like learning in ZK. So I suppose, I'm sure everyone here has like tried to pick up a new skill or learn something. So I myself have tried to learn Mandarin. The first thing that happened when I did that, I realized there was basically a million different things out there, and it's very confusing. And this is especially true for ZK as well, especially topics that are incredibly complex. So if you ever look online and you try to learn kind of like the space, as most of you here do, there are a lot of different tutorials, there are a lot of different opinions. On top of that, the topic is very complex. So we went around building a kind of opinionated on-ramp into the world of ZK. And the way we went about doing this was we wanted to start with like the basics. So teach people some of the fundamental kind of mathematical foundations, black box concepts that are either too advanced or too complicated, because one of the most important things in your learning is to keep up momentum. So what you do is you black box concept, and then once people are more familiar with it, you go back and kind of break it down. A focus on experimentation, so like building, breaking, and iterating, because as you do that, you kind of get hands-on experience, and the optional deep dive. So as you become more familiar with the topics, you can kind of go down into it and really dig into some of the kind of like more advanced material. So yeah, here's just some pictures of some of the different students and people that have been taking part. So yeah, program overview. So the program is a 8-week program. We run it once a year in various different locations. We start with, and it's really well organized. We have basically 3 stages. We have like a stage 0, which is, I'm sure, I think some of you have taken the program this year. There's basically a stage 0, which is like a preparation stage where you kind of get up to speed with the base level of knowledge that you should have, kind of to level set everyone. We then have like the first stage, which is the first 5 weeks, which is, covering all the material, kind of like introduction to ciphers, modular mathematics, all that kind of stuff. Circom, so like learning kind of like some of the ZK DSLs, and basically kind of learning and experimenting as you go along. And then the final stage, which is the final one being 3 weeks of basically on kind of like just practical open source contributions. Yeah, so that's kind of what is an 8-week program. And the way it's composed is that every week we have students essentially present what they've been learning, because when it comes to learning, it's not just about studying itself, but the way that you learn is by retrieval. Once you've learned something, you've got to like pull it out and then present it. We have weekly co-working sessions. Peer learning is incredibly effective, so having students talk to each other and learn from each other. We have mentor office hours, so there are researchers from the PSE that are there that you can talk to about your idea or your project or the kind of issues that you're going through. And we then have like a dedicated time spent on open source contributions, because not only do you want people to be like engineers and researchers in the space, but we want them to be open source contributors. That's actually as important as the material itself. So yeah, guiding principles. Subtraction. So one of the core principles that we have is that we want to be able to empower people to kind of contribute in the space. So once they leave the program, they continue to work, they continue to kind of contribute, they continue to do their own study groups. And also do it in a way that's sustainable. Another thing is, as I mentioned, the actual course itself is quite minimalist. We've kind of cut away at the things that we think are maybe too advanced and too early on in the program. So we focus on depth rather than breadth. And yeah, success stories. So before I continue, any questions? I know I've been going pretty fast, but does anyone have any questions about core program? I know some of you have gone through it. Okay, cool. So, yeah, these are some of the students I've gone through, including some of our researchers. Yeah, so you might recognize some of them. Yeah, so over the last year, we have trained over 100 emerging engineers and researchers in the space. 90% are new to open source, or they've never even heard of public goods. And since then, they've done significant contributions, not just to PSE projects, but to the open source community in general. So you can actually go to our repo, take a look at the work they've done and all the public contributions themselves. We've basically done this program across several basic cities in the world. So we have Taiwan, we have Japan, we have South Korea, we have Ecuador, we have basically a whole number of different places that we've been running this. And we have basically a support system once it's done. So once you're done with the program, you can go take on some of our other programs. We have learning grants that continue for people that want to kind of really dig deep into a certain area. We have like a global community that have gone through this. And we have like additional programs that are more advanced. So the acceleration program, it's kind of not part of this presentation, but it's specifically designed for people that want to go for a research focus. They get to work with our researchers, they get to work with people that are already in the PSE, and what they end up doing is they kind of take on tasks and issues within these projects via a grant-based system. So next steps, yeah, so expanding new locations. We're constantly refining the program so it's more scalable, more maintainable, and the idea is to basically kickstart more communities and basically grow it over the course of the next year or so. Now, with that said, that's it, done. As I said, short and sweet. If you want to know more, you can go to our website, you can hit up GitHub, you can hit me up on basically any social channel, that's my ID, Telegram, Twitter, etc. And you can also shoot me an email. With that said, any questions? Great. Oh, what was that?
When is the next level of the program?
So the next, actually that's a good question. So for the current locations, the next kind of cycle will be summer next year. But as we open up to more locations, what we typically do is, and we did this year as well, when we looked at new cities, we actually see what's the best time. We'll like look at the city or we'll look at the location and say, hey, when can most people make it? And then basically design it around that. But so far it's been in summer.
How many people in one cohort?
Oh, how many people per cohort? I think that varies depending on each location, typically around 20 or so. We do have, so what would happen is that we get basically a bunch of different applications, and it's kind of important to know that while this is an introduction to like ZK, there is like a technical level that you need to have. So we end up interviewing a lot of people. For our last program, I think we interviewed something like, it was like 80, 90 people, and maybe 15 to 20 people get through, just because we need to make sure that they have like a certain level of technical kind of proficiency. But yeah, each location is about 20 people. Cool, great, that's it. No, so with that said, we're done. If you guys have any questions, reach out to us.